My pleasure to be here and to be able to show you what really lies beneath the skin, what's inside of you. What does it really look like? And anything and everything that I show you, that you see under the sheets, is real, is human, so it wasn't somebody. But these things have been plastinated just to preserve them. They will not make you sick. They don't have any odor, unpleasant odor. I mean, I've worked with these things for more than 40 years, and I'm still healthy, so not to worry. The other thing that I say is that the dead never hurt anyone, you know. So, but still, when I show something, if you don't want to see it, just close your eyes. And if you really like to see it, when we're finished, then you're welcome to come down, and I'll have a few more things out here. You can walk around them, look at it, and maybe touch it, pick it up, or maybe not. But before I show you anything, I just want to spend a minute or two explaining the process of plastination. So when we say plastination, what happens is, first of all, I'd like to thank people who donated their body to science, because if they didn't donate it, we wouldn't be here tonight to look at those things. So I'm very grateful to them, and I treat these things with a lot of respect and expect you all to do the same. So after the person dies, their body is embalmed, which is like what they do at the funeral home, except that at the funeral home, they put in enough fluid just to keep the body for a few days. We keep it for a longer time, so we need to put in a lot more fluid. A few months later, when the tissues are fixed, then we dissect them. I dissected these things. Anything that you see is what I dissected, and it took me a year and a half to produce these things over here. And so you remove the skin and show the muscles or show the heart or whatever else you want to show. And after doing that, these things are put in a solution of acetone to remove the fat. And first, hot and room temperature and cold acetone, that takes a few weeks. And then these things are put in a resin. And that is put at a low temperature in a vacuum, so it gradually replaces the body fluids by that plastic or resin. And depending upon what tissue it is, it takes that amount of time, and then you take it out, drip the excess resin, and then you position it. So by positioning, and maybe I can show you a picture. So here is a picture of something that you put all these needles and metal things through it, and so it stays in that position, and then you cure it, which means you put some gas through it, so the stuff becomes hard and it becomes like plastic. And then it doesn't dirty you, and it can just last for a long time. It has many advantages versus a wet thing. If I had something which was not plastinated, I'd need to have it in a fluid, and it would be a lot more smelly and a lot difficult to carry, etc., etc. So that, in a nutshell, is the process of plastination. So I want you all to make a fist, and then open and close it, and keep doing that at the rate of about 60 times a minute. 60 times. That is what your little heart does all day, all night long. And this that I'm holding is a heart. It's a real human heart. These cuts are the ones I made to show the inside of the heart. And when it's in the body, it fits in like this. The heart starts beating at about 12 weeks of gestation, long before anything else. It's one of the first organs to start working in the fetus and keeps on beating. I think of it as a little engine which says, I can, and goes on and on and on. My heart has already beaten about 2.5 billion times. That could give you my age, right? You just work it backwards. Or in terms of, say, how much fluid has it pumped? How many liters of blood? Well, it's pumped over 200 million liters of blood in a lifetime. That's what this little heart does. Now, is that amazing or what? And then you hear of somebody having a coronary bypass, you say. So what is a coronary bypass? Coronary arteries are the arteries that surround the heart like the crown goes over the head. And it's those arteries that supply blood to the heart. And if those arteries get narrowed or get blocked, that's when somebody would have a heart attack. And before they get completely blocked, they might try to bypass it to replace it. I want you to imagine the size of those coronary arteries that are replaced in a bypass. This here is a cast of just the coronary arteries. Blood was flowing through each and every single thread that you see over here. And if one of these arteries, let's say at this point, it's only a few millimeters, gets blocked, then no blood can go to all this part of heart. And that is a lot of heart muscle, and the muscle would die. And the result of that, the person themselves might be dead as well. So it's not very big. And how I got this was that we injected a dye in the artery and then dissolved all the tissue away. So you are left with just a cast of the coronary arteries. I also have a heart from somebody who had a bypass. So this vessel here is a bypass, and if you were close enough and you come look at it in here, you can see this blue thread. That's where they stitched it up. So they took a vein or an artery, they can take it from the leg or from the arm, put one end here, they bypass the blocked segment so the blood can come in through this and then go down through that to the heart. So that is a single bypass, and sometimes they can do more than one quadruple bypass. They'll be bypassing 4 blood vessels. Also, this person had an artificial valve. This thing right here that I can put my finger through, that piece of metal, that was a valve that was put in there to replace the valve in the heart that was not working properly. You know, you often hear of somebody saying, oh, so-and-so has a hole in the heart. Do you think you have any holes in your heart? Well, when they say somebody has a hole in the heart, what they mean is that they have an extra hole in the heart. But all of us have more than 12 holes in one heart, in our heart. That's how the blood comes into chambers, goes from one to the other, to another, and out. And blood just flows in one direction, doesn't go backwards, doesn't go the wrong way. That's how it all works together. This is another heart, and this person had a double bypass, and one at the back over here and one in front here. This is a bypass segment. The other thing you might think, why does this heart look so big? Well, normal heart is the size of your fist. That was why I asked you to make a fist. Your heart is as big as your fist. But when the heart is diseased, it can stretch, it can become larger. So a large heart is not necessarily a better heart. But if you were to breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out, and you do that about 16 or 18 times a minute. And when you breathe in, that air is going into the lungs. And this, what I'm holding here, is a healthy, nice, big lung. It's almost white, except for a few black spots that are there. That's because of the carbon deposits. And this person did not smoke. Those few black spots are there because of the pollutants in the atmosphere. That's how the lung would fit right in there. Compare to smoke or not to smoke. The choice is yours. Nobody can take a cigarette and put it to your lips and go like that. Only you can. Why? So you end up with a lung like this, you know? But the thing is, what I say to people, never give up hope. If this person had quit smoking and didn't smoke for 5 years, chances are the lung would be as good as this. So while there's life, there's hope. The other thing which I didn't point out, but I'm sure you noticed, that this lung is so much smaller. It's so much smaller because it's all full of carbon and it's diseased. And even though I tried to put as much air in this as I did in this other lung, it just didn't inflate. It just doesn't have that capacity. This here is a chest wall. I guess you could see that here. Those are just the bones. And in this one, you can see how the muscles are connecting the ribs together. That's the inside of it. And this artery over here, sometimes they use that for the bypass because it's so close to the heart, and it's quite easy to do that. Specimen in which the lungs and the heart are together and block, and this part lower down here, that is the diaphragm. That is what is separating these things from the other organs like liver and stomach and the abdomen. I call it or compare it to the safety deposit box. And what this is there for is to protect the brain, which is inside. And it's the brain is very delicate. So even moving it like that, you don't want it banging like this or getting hurt, even if somebody was to touch it. And like you probably wonder, what is that brain like? So if I open this skull cap, you can see that there is the brain inside. Now, normally, there's no space between the brain and the skull, but here, because this is a plastinated one, it's dried and shrunk a bit, and also didn't belong to this person, so it's looking smaller. So when you move our head from side to side, it doesn't go banging like that. And also, there's some fluid that the brain floats in, and there are some membranes which cover it called the meninges, which you're not seeing over here. Now, the brain weighs about 1,500 grams. And here you can see its different parts. These parts up here is the cerebrum. This bottom part is the cerebellum. And this part in the middle coming down like this and continuous with the spinal cord like my finger is the brain stem. And different parts of the brain have to do with different things. For example, when you see something and you interpret it, that is the back part, the occipital part of the brain that is responsible for that. And all your memory is in this part here called the temporal part, and so on and so forth. Who has a thicker skull, by the way, men or women? Take a guess, 50% chance of being right. The men do, better to protect their brain with. No, jokes aside, the bones are heavier in men, everything is, so the skull's thicker too. But look at just one skull. In the same person, parts of it are thick and parts of it are thin. And if I was to hold it up against the light, you can almost see light shining through some parts of it, which are very, very thin. The side part, the temporal part, is quite thin. That's why they say don't give anybody a blow on the temple, because that part is a lot more delicate and can break. And also, like you've heard Dr. McLean talk about helmets, I emphasize the same thing. So because that thing is so delicate and it can break, so you wear a helmet to protect your brain. And I also, when I go to visit schools, I go anywhere, anybody who wants to see or learn, I take those things, and I also take a paper, and I show them, says, here's an old paper, and there's a picture of an actress. She was only 40, Natasha Richardson, and she was on a ski hill, went skiing, and just on a bunny slope, she wasn't wearing a helmet, fell down, got up and said, no, I'm fine, nothing wrong. But unfortunately, 4 days later, she was dead. So, you only have one brain, one body, protect it. continuous with it, coming down like that. And because the spinal cord is delicate also, that is protected by these vertebrae. So we have this backbone or vertebrae. These are not all of them, but many of them. And inside these vertebrae is the hole where I'm putting my finger, and that's how the spinal cord would be inside, and the nerves come out from the side. These things that you're seeing here, this one that I'm pinching, for example, now over here, these are nerves, you know. We tell people, you're getting on my nerves. Here, I'm pinching a nerve. And these nerves, they are attached to the spinal cord, but they have to go to all different parts of the body, for example, the tips of the fingers or toes. So to come out of the spinal cord, they come out between these two vertebrae. If you look at it closely over here, there's a small hole. So they come out through that hole. And between these two vertebrae, so that you don't rub one bone against the other, just where my finger is, there is a disc. So when somebody has something problem with the disc and that slips, it's not in position when they move, then that nerve gets caught between the two bones, and that's when they get very severe pain going down the legs or the arms or whatever it may be. So that's what happens with that, and all these things, of course, join together. We have 33 or 34 of these vertebrae. As you can see in here, all these vertebrae are joined together, and through these small holes, through these tiny holes from each side, nerves will be coming out. That is a stomach, and this is the esophagus or the tube. So everything that you eat or drink goes down through that tiny hole in here, and then it goes into the stomach. Can you imagine all this bottle of water and a plate full of food going in there and fitting in that? It all stretches, right? So that's why it's hard to hold your stomach in after you've had a big meal. You sometimes need to loosen your trousers a bit. And then after a few hours, it all goes down, and then it's back to this size. It can hold about 1.5 kilos of food in it. And, so sends it out. And from here, the food goes then into the intestine. Some people say it looks like the letter J. But, different people's little different stomach. And in a newborn child, the stomach is just like a lemon. So it only holds 30 milliliters of milk in it. That's why they're always hungry. So those of you who are young and when you have kids, don't get upset when they're hungry asking for milk all the time. Give it to them. That's all the gut. There's the stomach, and then there is all this small intestine, and then there's large intestine. This is all collapsed, but that one piece of popcorn that you eat has to go through all these. It has to go through more than 24 feet of intestine. And your body keeps what is good, and what is not good goes out the next day or the day after when you go do your poo. It's like, it reminds me of somebody who swallowed a diamond, and they wanted to steal the diamond, so they swallowed it. And the diamond is no good to the body. So 2 days later, the diamond comes out, If we were to put this in here, then you can see that this is how it will all fit inside, like that, along with the stomach and along with the liver all together. Now, this is the difference. These things were done last year, and they've been preserved properly and in right position, so they look almost like they would in the body, whereas the other one was done 15 years ago, and I didn't know any better then. that is the abdominal wall. So that is what keeps all those intestine and covers them. It will cover up like this. This little here thing is the belly button. These are the abs. So you see these 3 separate muscles. These are what keeps everything in, nicely toned in, makes you move and does other things. This one in the middle on this side, that is the six-pack. We all have a six-pack. Only some of us have it better formed than others. On this side, it looks thin because I removed that to show the difference. This is a liver. This is a nice, healthy liver. This thing over here, that is the gallbladder. And if I had to put this liver in here, it's going to fit. Probably may not fit in this one, but that's how it would go on the right side like that. So you have a tip of the gallbladder peeking out a little bit below the ribs at that point. We've heard that, it's all right to have a drink or 2 drinks a day or not more than 10 in a day. But some people have lots and lots of drinks, more than what they should. And then what may happen to their liver is that it might look like this. And this is a cirrhotic liver. Not everybody who drinks too much gets cirrhosis, and not everybody who has cirrhosis drank. But you're increasing your chances. And the way I say it is, why do it? It's like you tell people you all drive, so what do you put in the car? And so, of course, you put gas in it. Why don't you go and put some water? Well, this one is not free, but, costs very little. Well, the car will stop, right away, maybe. So how many cars will you have in a lifetime? More than one? How many bodies do you have for a lifetime? One. So when somebody tells you, don't do this, it's bad for you, why do you do it? A lot of people say, no, boy, I'm going to do it, I like it. Why? What we have here is our own filtration plant. These are the 2 kidneys. They look like the kidney beans. And all these things in the middle, these are mostly the blood vessels. And there are also this ureter on this side and this one on over here. So the kidneys filter the blood all the time. All the good part goes back, and the impurities go down through these tiny tubes, the ureters, and they collect in the bladder. And we know that we can live with 1 kidney because that's how people can donate their kidneys. But without a kidney, you cannot live. Or if they don't function properly, you need to have dialysis. What I have here now, this part in front that I'm holding, that little tiny part is the bladder. That's where all the pee collects in there till you're ready to go to the bathroom. Everybody needs to make at least 500 milliliters of urine in a day to be healthy. Anything less than that and won't be good for you. So when the bladder has about 150 milliliters, it sends a message to the brain, I'm getting full, I think I need to go do my pee. But then you could be in the middle of something and say, no, can't go right now, wait. So the bladder stretches a little more and stretches a little more, and it gets really full. And then when it gets about 500 milliliters, it could be hurting. And you do, I really got to go do my pee, and you go running to the bathroom and do your pee. And then you feel so good, feel so relieved. So that is just this little thing. Again, this can stretch and then can reach up to the belly button and then contract again. But this other thing that you see on this side, this one that I'm holding now, that is the house we all grew in when we were in our mother's tummy. That is the uterus. They say it's 3 by 2 by 1. It's 1 inch thick, 2 inches wide, 3 inches long. But just before the baby is born, it's paper thin. And soon after the baby is born, 6 weeks later, it's back to its size, ready to go again. These other small things here, or this one here that I'm holding, that is the ovary. They say they are the size of an almond, and that's what that is. And this one on this side, if I lift it up, I think you can perhaps see there's a, I don't know how much can you zoom, little black thing sticking out of the opening. That is a little tumor that this person had. It was in the uterus and it's coming out through the cervix. Here, what you are seeing are the 2 kidneys with the ureters and the other tubes, but also this is the bladder, and this structure at the base right here, that is the prostate. So this is the prostate. Normal prostate is the size of a walnut, and it's at the base of the bladder. That's where it's located. You can compare the two. Here, left part of the skin, and in this part, there were all these tendons and things going there. And there's also a nerve. So this cut that I've made here, that is what they would do when somebody has carpal tunnel syndrome. They cut it right here to release the pressure on the nerve. I'd ask you all to stand up for a minute, please. And now if you stand on one foot, if you can, and then you can turn around. Or you can stand on your toes, and then please sit down. And now, this is the foot you were standing on. Imagine you stand on your toes like this. Those are the toes. And you think of yourself, what was it when you were standing? There were 206 bones in your body. Balanced on these, there are more than 350 joints, 550 muscles, all working in harmony. What better orchestra could there ever be? And we didn't count the blood and the other organs which are working. So everything is working all the time. I think we should be surprised that more things don't go wrong rather than get really worried, oh, this joint of mine is crooked. It is. It hurts, but it's only 1 out of 350. I'm happy that the other 349 are working properly. The reason for doing that or for showing you the amazing thing is because I often ask people, say, now, think of some of the amazing things in the world. And what do you think is the most amazing thing in this whole wide world? And the answer is, or what I think is, the human body. The human body. And you have one off. So, all you need to do, and it's an incredible machine, all you need to do is 3 things. Just 3. You got to feed it. You are what you eat, so you pay attention to that. You got to move. If you don't move, it will all seize up. Even your car, when you've gone away for 4 months, you tell your friends, move the car a bit. The tires shouldn't be standing on that. So move it. That's 2. And the 3 is rest it. Even when you're resting, it's still working, but not as much. So it needs time to recuperate. And you do those 3 things, and you can do whatever you want in this whole wide world. This here is the largest bone in the body, the biggest bone, and that is the thigh bone, that is the femur. And this is also the femur, but look at the difference. This one over here has an artificial hip. This person had an artificial hip, so they had this big piece of metal put in there. And then they learn to walk with it. And when you come down, if you like, you can pick this up, and you'll notice the difference in the weight of these 2 things. The other thing I'd like to point out is that this artificial hip or an artificial knee, all these artificial things, it's great they can do it, but they're never as good as the original. Because after 10, 15 years, they might need to redo it, replace it. So that's one of the bones in the leg, the shin bone. That's the femur in the thigh. So that's how you have the knee joint there. So when somebody has an artificial knee, they'll saw this part off, and they put this piece of metal. It's got the prongs on the inside. Hammer it in, put some glue around it, and take the other bone. This is the tibia. They'll again cut off or saw off the top part, replace it with this piece of metal with a plastic on it. This metal part goes inside, and then they stitch up the muscles and things. And so when the person moves, then You are moving this piece like that. But after about 10 years, look what happened to this plastic. It got all worn out and chewed up, and that's why it had to be taken out, and that's how I have this to show you. A body can fix its own natural, normal stuff, but not the plastic. This is a pacemaker that you can put inside when somebody's heart is not working properly. This is a very old one, so it's quite big. These days, it's about half the size of this. What this is, this wire comes out from there. They put it through a vein in the arm. It goes like this, and the tip of the wire rests on the heart. And so when the heart rate goes down, this sends a current to pace it up. And then if this has a battery, the battery runs out. That's why after a few years, you need to, there's some screws here. They take this off, leave the wire, change the battery, and put it in. These are two other artificial hips, different sizes, different types. And this thing here is a pin. When you hear of somebody having it, they need to put a pin in the bone. That's a kind of actual pin. There's a screw here to tighten it. If you make a fist and then you bend your wrist and open your fingers and move it, how many bones do you think moved in that, or how many joints? This is, these are the bones in one hand. And if I put it like this, you can see in the wrist, there are these 8 small bones. These are called carpal bones. In the palm, there are 5 of these bones. And then the thumb has 2, and each of the other fingers have 3 bones in each. That's why you can bend them like that. So there are 27 bones in one hand. 27 bones in one hand. This shoulder blade is a little broken here, but that's the right side, so will fit like this. Fitting in this socket is the head of this bone, the arm bone. That's called the funny bone or the humerus. It fits like that, so you can move your shoulder around. Do you know why you call this the funny bone? Does anybody know that? There is a nerve that lies close to the elbow, just behind this bone where my finger is. And sometimes that nerve gets pinched between the bone and another hard thing that you might have your elbow on. And so that sends a funny, or actually more pain, tingling sensation down the arm. So they call this the funny bone. And there are 2 bones. This is one of them. And they join like this to make the elbow. The other one is on that side. I showed you the biggest bone in the body, but where do you think is the smallest bone in the body? Yes, inside the ear. But how small are those small bones? Can you imagine? Try and think. The size of the nail on the little finger? Maybe? Look, this is how small. These are the 3 bones inside the ear. That's how tiny they are. Not only they're tiny, they move. If these bones didn't move, you wouldn't hear. Why do they call this finger the ring finger? Do you know? Some people say, well, because you wear the engagement ring or the wedding ring on that. But you wear rings on all fingers. Why they call this the ring finger is because at one time they thought there was a direct connection between this finger and the heart, so they called it the ring finger, but that's not true. This is the hip, this is the pelvis, the 2 hip bones joined together, and with this bone in the middle is part of the vertebrae, the backbone, the sacrum, and that's how that forms together. See, all the information from the body has to go up the spinal cord. So if the cord is broken at this point, and that means no information can go up or come down, that's how you get paralyzed from that point below that. And so if it's quadriplegic, it must be quite high up in the neck, but lower enough that the diaphragm is moving, so that's how the breathing is all right. And that's one reason why when I put that or emphasize that is to say how easily it can break, and that's the reason for making sure you have your seat belts on when you're driving. But it would depend, to answer your question, it would depend on a combination of factors, whether they decide whether they can or they can't. The thing is, with these nerves and brain and things, it's not that easy to join. And even if you join, they don't work together or work properly. The connections can't be made. Head and neck that I dissected, and the way it's cut, that you can see part of the brain inside. I've left this part of the brain, removed it from this side. This that I'm touching now, that is one of the membranes, the meninges, and you can see this around like that. And you can see the nose, that this part made an opening in the nose. And you can see the muscles and nerves. And actually, even here, when you come close by, you will see that in here, where the tip of my finger is, that's where the ossicles are, those tiny bones in the ear that make you hear. So those are in there. So you can see this. There's the diaphragm. And from the lungs, you can see this was a smoker. Here, what I'm pointing to now, that is the pancreas. The other organs have been removed, but you can see the kidneys, how far back they are. And these are the abdominal muscles and the nerves and everything. Those are the discs between the vertebrae. Here is the spinal cord inside. This is the bladder. But before you see even other things, just imagine this little bit of space. That's all there is for all the organs between the front and the back of the body. There isn't that much. And the way this one is cut was cut with a very fine wire. So just holding it, sawing it like that, because if you use the saw, the blade would be too rigid and too thick, so won't go down. And you can see the ligaments and the joints. And this one at the back, you can see the spinal cord inside, because I removed part of the vertebrae in between over here. And even in this part, you can see the spinal cord. This one was done just to show all the nerves you can see, which are coming around. And this is the nerve that I mentioned, which makes it called the funny bone. See how close to it is to the bone. And imagine all these string-like things. These are all the nerves. In this one, you can see all the organs together. So these are the lungs there, the heart, and all the intestines and everything. Here is the shoulder blade with the arm and the collarbone over here. This one is done to show the knee. So inside these bones are those ligaments which go like a cross. So sometimes people injure those. They say, oh, I've torn my cruciate ligaments. Those are those ones there. And there's a cushion here between the two bones, so you don't rub one bone against the other. The kneecap is turned back. So when I showed you the hip bones, this shows the muscles which are in there. Other organs would be inside there. At the back here, this big muscle is the gluteus maximus. And if you turn around and look further at the back, this big, thick nerve, very, very thick, that is the biggest nerve in the body, which is the sciatic. So that one is this. And this big muscle, when you say the glutes, this is the biggest glute, gluteus maximus. This one here is the chest cavity with the diaphragm. So I removed the lungs, removed the heart from that space, and that heart and the lungs are still there. So for example, when you're looking at this, this is a piece of the diaphragm. That's what would go in between like this to separate the thorax from the abdomen, the chest from the abdomen. This thin sheet of muscle. By the way, do you know why they ask women during childbirth to take a deep breath and then push down? Because when you take a deep breath, the diaphragm goes down and it increases the intra-abdominal pressure. And so there's more pressure then. And these two are also at the back here. These are also what are called organ packages. So you have all the organs, including the kidneys in here, and one has uterus, the other one has prostate. Well, I have one more for you guys. Who do you think is the most important person in this room at this time? Yeah? I want everyone to take your hand, point to yourself, and say, I am. And remember that. You are the most important person. You are the most amazing thing in the whole wide world. All you need to do is to look after yourself, be selfish, look after yourself, and have fun. Good luck. And now if you want to come down and take a look around and ask me any questions, I'll stay as long as anybody does. And if you just like to go and you've had enough, then that's fine too. Thank you.